Hello everyone, welcome to the first workshop in our series for the Solana Super Game Jam. My name is Karthik Makai from Honeycomb Protocol and Superteam, and today we're going to be covering just a general introduction to Web3 gaming and then some information on the program itself. So this is going to be a 2-week series of different topics that we're going to be covering, from an overview of the Solana tech, Web3 game development frameworks that are available, how to really make your game sticky and fun, how to go to market, acquire your first set of users, as well as different tips and strategies on monetization and fundraising, and then also how to have a successful submission. So let's get started. So first off, what is Superteam? Well, Superteam is a public good ecosystem-led organization that is really focused in on the Solana ecosystem. So there's a lot of verticals in Superteam, but it's really about getting new individual contributors to learn, earn, and build. And these programs here are really to support that. So the first one is the bounty board called Earn. So earn.superteam.fun, you can go and see all the individual bounties that are placed by the individual super teams in each region. And everyone can go there and you can start applying for these different allocations. Then we also have this thing called Instagrants. Let's say you have an idea and you need a little bit of grant support to get that kicked off. Well, you can go ahead and apply directly. And then my favorite one is the ecosystem call. So this is hosted by Kash, who's one of the co-founders of Superteam. It's super entertaining, and I highly recommend you go see some of the old ones, but it runs once a month and it goes over some of the latest network updates, as well as upcoming events and any Solana related news and activities. The last one is this fast track. So this is all the accelerators and incubators that are partnered up with Superteam. They range from like Orange DAO, Alliance DAO, and Outlier Ventures. It's really for those projects that are very early on in that pre-seed stage that need a little bit of funding for maybe the founder to go full-time, or for those first few hires. Of course, you can find all of this information at superteam.fun. So now let's go into the Solana Super Game Jam itself. So this is one of the largest localized game jams that have ever occurred on the network. We're kicking it off in the 2 top gaming markets, which is Vietnam and Japan. And we're going to be running it in 4 cities concurrently. So that's Ho Chi Minh City, Hanoi, Da Nang, and Tokyo. There's over $50,000 in prizes. The overall program is going to span for 4 weeks. The first 2 weeks, we're going to have all of these workshops and courses slowly come out. And then we're going to have the actual pitch day on December 14th and 15th. And then after that, we're going to have a 2-month incubation period for the top 5 projects, which we'll go into more of the details here later in the next few slides. So this is a breakdown of the prize allocation itself. The first place gets a nice 20K, and then it trickles down to the next 4 winners. We also have this meme coin bonus, which we have 2 allocation for 2 projects and then 4 honorable mentions. So that's how kind of the prizes are going to be allocated. And then the most important part here is the judging criteria itself. So there's 3 things we're really looking at. The first one is the market potential. So we're going to evaluate what your feedback loop is like, what your business model is like, what your tokenomics, how that works, and how it plays into your revenue model. So we really want to see the potential it has for your game on the market. And then the next one is the impact on Solana. What type of infrastructure are you using? How much of the game is touching Solana, etc. And then the last one is on the gameplay, IP, and assets. So is your game really fun? What are the aesthetics like? What are the visual likes? What is the sound and music like, etc. And then just, does it have a good vibe, right? So this is the incubation program. It's going to span for 2 months after the top 5 winners are announced. We also have co-office space in all of the 4 major cities. And then at the end of the program, we're going to have a VC demo day. The goal is to give really focused support to these top 5 projects. All of you guys are going to be in different stages. So we're going to start off with figuring out what the exact requirements are, and then get that exact support from the foundation and various partners that we have in the program. Now, these are the organizers. So, of course, Superteam Vietnam and Superteam Japan. We also have Honeycomb Protocol and Topebox. So Honeycomb is Web3 gaming infrastructure. We provide a lot of game primitives that are available directly through our SDK. We also have a Unity SDK and Godot SDK that's out there. So the goal is to really help accelerate your integration of Web3 and Solana. And the entire protocol is the first one ever fully built using state compression. So we're able to significantly reduce your on-chain fees. And then Topebox is the premier game studio out here in Vietnam. And they're really helping us with all of the material for the workshops on how to make game really sticky and fun. They've had a lot of success in Web2 that we want to bring in into Web3 to help mentor a lot of the projects here. So these are the various partners. So from Sonic, who's helping us with the prize pool, as well as they'll be showcasing their Rush ECS framework in one of the later lectures. And then we have GameShift, who's giving us API credits, as well as AWS. And then Shift is our official RPC sponsor. And Civic is giving us KYC and identity verification. So you'll be able to get free credits. And then Dora Hacks, and as well as Feed Protocol is giving API credits as well for VRF. And then we have various community partners. So if you need to get in contact with any of these, reach out to us. We'll also have references in the Notion document to be able to contact these teams. And if you need to get any additional support, we can spin up a group chat for any of the teams. So this is the agenda for today. So we're going to be going through some of the rules of the game jam itself. When is demo day and when can you submit? And then we're going to go through an introduction on Web3 gaming, introduction on blockchain and Solana, and then some of the key challenges we have right now in Web3 gaming that we want to kind of overcome. So let's go through the rules. Now on the code and asset reusing policy, so it's totally okay if you have pre-existing materials. That's completely acceptable in this competition. If you do use any pre-existing material, we'll just be judging on that new components that are integrated or added in. So all the new functionalities. And then we ask that every project clearly document what is new that is added in the Web2 side and the Web3 so that it makes the judging very efficient. And then also for all the open source assets and third-party assets that are utilized, again, totally acceptable. We just ask that you properly document these sources as well as clearly state what is used within the code itself, and make sure you follow whatever the original license is in that open source repo. Then on IP, so you own all the IP, but we're allowed to showcase or feature the games through like social media or on any media outlets. So on the submission guidelines itself. So the starting date is November 18th, and we're going to span until December 15th when the pitch day ends. The composition can be either solo or team, and the skills can range from anything from just a game designer or all the way up to a game developer, right? So although we strongly encourage all participants to submit an MVP, we understand that not everyone is technical, right? You might submit like a 30-page proposal with all of the game assets created, right? Because you're an artist and you don't have development experience. So for special circumstances, we'll make an exception based on what is being submitted. So we don't want anyone to feel like, oh, just because the game is not fully developed that I can't submit it, right? Or because I have nobody technical to code it, I can't submit it, right? We encourage anyone that's an individual contributor to go ahead and apply to the game jam. As far as the technical requirements, so these are the recommended game engines, either Unity, Godot, Unreal, or anything browser-based. And then the Web3 gaming infrastructure is Honeycomb, Sonic, GameShift, Magic Block, Turbo, or any of the Solana SDKs available like Unity, Godot, and Unreal. The format can be web, desktop, or mobile. And then for documentation, again, we ask that you clearly document all of the sources, all of the design of the game itself, because next in the judging criteria, it'll help us a lot, right? So again, we're taking a look mainly on the market potential, the token economics, the revenue model, the engagement loop of the game itself. And then the next one is the Solana impact, so the use of Solana infrastructure and tools and how you're utilizing the blockchain itself. And then the last one is on the visuals and the IP. So is the game really fun? And does it look really good? So for all of the communication and announcements, they're going to be broadcasted throughout all of these different channels. So Discord, Telegram, email, and Twitter. As well as if you need any support and resources directly, you can go to the main website. It has a list of mentors, the FAQ section, as well as the various resources. This QR code here will take you to a Notion document. So I'll pause here for a few seconds for everyone to scan this QR code, and you'll be able to get direct access to the resources itself. We'll also be putting this link in the chat. Great. So on the demo day and post game jam. So a week before the actual pitch day itself, we're going to have a practice demo day. And here we're going to be giving one-on-one mentoring sessions and going through the various demos that are being submitted, as well as tips on your presentation itself. We'll have an official Excel sheet with different time slots where you can sign up. And then the pitch days are going to be 14th and the 15th. And again, we'll have an Excel sheet where you can go ahead and register. And then after the pitch day, we'll do the judging and then announce the winners shortly after. So once the winners are announced, again, we'll have this accelerator program with a $4,000 scholarship for 2 months with co-working space. And then it's going to be fully on site in 4 of the major cities. So again, that's Ho Chi Minh, Hanoi, Da Nang, and Tokyo. At the end of this program is going to be the VC demo day. And this is mainly geared towards giving you guys that really focused support to go from 0 to 100. So really excited about that. And if there's any questions, you can ask them directly in chat and we'll get back to you. So let's go to the next section here. Now let's kick off the introduction to Web3 gaming. So welcome to the Great Migration. Web3 is the next evolution of gaming. If you look at the history of consumer behavior, we see players have always kind of determined the direction of the industry. There's 2 interesting case studies that kind of indicates it's truly a player-driven ecosystem. And it always revolves on the democratization of in-game content or giving more power to the players. So the first major shift we saw was pay-to-play to free-to-play, allowing anyone to be able to access in-game content without actually having to pay a fee upfront. And the classic examples of this are RuneScape and World of Warcraft. The next really big shift we saw was with user-generated content. So the ability for anyone to make additions to the game. This allowed more content than a studio could ever make individually. Again, giving more power to the creators and the players and the consumers. And the best examples of this are Minecraft and Fortnite. So what is the next major shift? That's Web3. And this is because of the benefits that it really gives us. So the first one and the most important is the ownership of your in-game assets. Then we have decentralization. So rather than having a centralized authority, you decentralize it to the people or the players. And then the third one is some of the primitives that have been discovered so far. So very similar to previous to free-to-play, we had pay-to-play, right? So I think play-to-earn will be another one that really unlocks a lot in the future. We'll touch more on this in the challenges of Web3, but it'll be interesting to see how it kind of plays towards this next evolution. Again, everything always comes back to accessibility and democratizing gaming. So originally we had Bitcoin, which was very expensive, and then Ethereum, which allowed for executable code, and then we have Solana, which solved the main issue with transaction costs while still being highly performant. And one of the greatest things about this is it was very similar to the transition from pay-to-play to free-to-play. By making it extremely cheap, we improved the accessibility of a tier 1 blockchain, which has just allowed for more users than ever before. And very similar to that is Honeycomb Protocol. So at Honeycomb, we reduced the cost of deploying and operating games by building it fully using state compression. And then we also reduced the complexity of development by making it very Web2 friendly to integrate. And now this is very similar to the transition we saw in user-generating content, where we can now allow anyone and everyone to be able to build and operate Web3 games. So now let's touch on the key differences between Web2 and Web3 gaming. So the most important one is the ownership of assets. So on Web2, your assets are stored on centralized servers, players don't really own these assets, versus on Web3, you have true ownership via NFTs. Assets are stored on these decentralized networks like Solana, and then it can be traded and sold independently of the game developer. Even if the game goes down, you can still access these items and still trade them on exchanges. The key differences in the monetary and economics, I just want to touch base on this really quickly. So in the revenue models in Web 2, we have a lot of different, we generate revenue really through upfront purchases, subscriptions, in-game purchases, and advertising, right? Versus in Web3, you have more of a shared economic between the players, developers, and the creators. Some of these examples are like play to earn, NFT asset ownership, staking, and then also decentralized autonomous organizations where players can vote on specific changes to the game or the ecosystem. And then as far as the players' role, so consumers have a fixed feedback loop in Web 2. Versus in Web 3, you can be an active participant who owns these assets and determines the direction of the game through DAO governance, for example. And then as far as ownership, again, owning your in-game assets and being secured on the blockchain. As far as data and security goes, I just want to touch on a few of these key ones. So on Web 2, your data is on a centralized database, which is very susceptible to some breaches, versus in Web 3, it's decentralized, and a lot of your personal data is not really stored unless the game chooses to store it on chain. And then as far as servers availability, Web 2 servers can be prone to DDoS attacks versus Web 3. It's extremely resilient, and there's not really a single point of failure. And then account security in Web 3, we use private keys, which are extremely secure. And then also, again, asset ownership, and then also lower risk of malware and insider threats. And then the next two items I just want to touch base on is interoperability and governance. So interoperability is really cool. So traditionally in Web 2, if you have an asset in the game, you can't really interact with anything outside of that game. But in Web 3, let's say you have some in-game items. One, you can take those in-game items into another game. Maybe a developer is launching a second iteration of that game. So you can actually export these items out and import them into the second generation of the game. Or you can take your items and go to some sort of lending protocol and maybe leverage up your items so that you get some token, and then you can maybe buy an item in the game, maybe destroy some boss or go on a raid and accomplish some task, and then give that item back and retrieve your tokens from the lending protocol. So a lot more interoperability is available, and I think this will open up a lot of experiments down the line. The last one is governance. So in Web 2, traditionally, gamers don't have the ability to really make decisions. Usually the game makes these decisions, the developer makes them. But in Web 3, it's very decentralized, and you can actually have governance to vote on specific properties, policies, and updates to the game itself. So now let's jump into the next section here. Okay, let's jump into the introduction to blockchain and Solana. So first, I want to go through the history of the web. So the World Wide Web was originally theorized in the European Council for Nuclear Research, or CERN, in the 1980s. So the origins of the web really was around the loss of information in complex evolving systems and how to really prevent that. So the solution was theorized to create this distributed hypertext system, which was essentially a network of information through interconnected links. From there, we had the Web 1.0 that transitioned in the 1990s. And this was just simple static websites using images and text. There weren't any real databases or architecture for handling large amounts of data in a secure manner, and a lot of very low level of immersion and interaction for the user experience. Most of the servers were simply self-hosted. And then we transitioned into Web 2.0. Here we saw a lot of scalability, security, monetization on scaling as well with AWS. And then we saw Kubernetes with Google Cloud Native Compute Foundation. However, these systems were centralized, meaning if you had payments, the payments could be censored. There isn't really full transparency. Data could be manipulated, and also keeping data secure is really costly. Essentially, and also like if there's political unrest happening, you could have loss of accessibility to certain apps due to certain regions being blocked out. And then now we have Web3. So now Web3, we have networks and protocols and applications built on top of blockchain technology in a decentralized, permissionless way. So yeah, the main key features of Web3 is that it's trustless, it's self-governing, it's permissionless, and it's fully distributed and robust, meaning there's not really a single point of failure, and it can't really be blocked out of specific regions. Anywhere where you can access the internet, you can access the blockchain. So what is Solana? This is a paper that I read in 2019, and I highly encourage everyone to go and take a look at it. It uses a new architecture revolving around proof of history. It was really innovative at the time, and it really paved the way with SVM technology now. A lot of the new chains that are being released are utilizing Solana's architecture. And now Solana has gone through so much testing, and it's extremely resilient and extremely optimized and efficient as well. And I think now we're going into the next evolution where we really push the boundaries, right? And kind of sharpen the blade of the protocol itself. These are all the innovations on Solana. We're not going to go through, in detail all of these, but there's actually a really good Medium article from Anatoly released in 2019, 2020 that kind of breaks down each of the key innovations that were utilized within the Solana virtual machine. If you're interested, I would highly recommend that you go take a look at it, especially if you're a developer that's looking to start building on Solana. As far as network performance goes, this just shows kind of the key differences between Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. So on Bitcoin, you have around 5 transactions per second, pretty high transaction fee. On Ethereum, it's around 30 transactions per second, still pretty high transaction fee. And then the innovation with Solana was this high performant, low transaction network, right? So the max capacity of a single node is 50,000 TPS. Right now, the network with all the distributed nodes is like around 4,000. And then slowly that gets increased, right? And we actually have this thing called Fire Dancer that's also coming out later on. And it's going to increase the performance of the chain to 1 million transactions per second, which is insane, right? Pretty much that'll be able to really onboard the next generation of users and pave the way for mass adoption of Web3. And of course, the average transaction fee there is multitudes cheaper than any other blockchain. So this is also a really interesting article, or interesting diagram that was released by A16Z. As you can see here, it shows how many monthly active users are on Solana. So right now, if you take a look between EVM and non-EVM chains, so on EVM side, the most active chain or most amount of users is Base. And then on Solana, the most active amount or the amount of users is around 100 million. So it's around 5-fold increase. And then from the next top, it's around a 3-fold, which is near. So Solana has the most amount of monthly active users. It also has a really great, thriving developer ecosystem. Most of the questions are already answered. And if you don't have an answer, you can just jump into any of the different developer ecosystem groups and you'll get support right away. Okay, now let's jump into the key challenges of Web3 gaming. Now, this will also be the last section of this workshop. So the first topic I want to touch on is play to earn. Last market cycle, we saw a huge surge of games that revolved around P2E. And there's a lot of issues with these games. The first one was that the gameplay really suffered. The primary focus of the developers was not really towards entertainment, but rather on the earning side. And then I think this made players really feel obligated to play for income rather than enjoyment. Then we saw a lot of repetitive mechanisms. This incentivized bots and extreme grinding, which made the game very bland overall. And then economic volatility. So almost all the P2E games that were released were not sustainable and didn't really make it beyond one market cycle or a few years. So what are some solutions to this? Well, we know that play to earn was a huge Web3 unlock, right? And it showed great success in PMF last cycle. Now I think it's time to discover how we can give power back to the players. In the current play to earn models, we talked about the issues, and all of these kind of revolved around not really giving power to the player, right? And now, just like we saw pay to play transition to free to play, how do we democratize and give more power to the users and the players, right? So I think the first step is to really focus on gameplay, make the game really fun and enjoyable and engaging, right? The next is to use some sort of identity verification. So utilize KYC to reduce bots in game. One really interesting example of this is Honeyland, which is a top game on Solana. They found that 90% of the revenue generated were from civic verified users. And then the last one is have more sustainable tokenomics, spend more time on the token strategy, and make it more resilient through these volatile market conditions. So the next topic I want to touch on is the user experience. One of the main issues we see is the complexity of blockchain and onboarding new users. Users have issues with understanding what a wallet is, what a private key is, what gas fees are, what transaction costs are, right? So one of the main solutions we can do is having more embedded wallets in game. So remove the entire wallet creation process as well, have the user onboarded through a simple Google auth using like TipLink, for example. And then the next one is the long onboarding process. There's a lot of steps to create a wallet and then to start playing. And then also, again, the complexity causes a high learning curve, and it's really hard for non-technical users. So what we can do is abstract all of those technical complexities away, have a really user-friendly interface where user doesn't even need to know that it's a Web3 game, automate the entire gas fee management, have tutorials if you do have Web3 elements in your game that require you to create a wallet, for example. Or you can also use some of the new tools that are available. For example, in Honeycomb, we have Shadow Signer. So this allows you to auto-sign all the transactions for the user. Now the user doesn't even need to know that this game is on Web3, right? So if you have like an embedded wallet, for example, and with Shadow Signer, it'll have a simple Web2 workflow for the user. And then maybe when the user wants to know, so they go into settings, they see, oh, wow, I have this thing called wallet. Then they start to learn about what is the blockchain and that, I can now take out my assets, etc. So that's the end of this slide. Just to recap, again, we went over the rules. We went over demo day and submissions. We took a dive into Web3 gaming, as well as an introduction on blockchain and Solana. And finally, we went over the key challenges of Web3. So we have a Notion with all of the resources that are available. I'll pause right here and take a second for you to scan this QR code, and we'll also drop this Notion link in the chat below.